This time, Greg Creswell. He is the Libertarian candidate for governor of the state of Michigan. Mr. Creswell, thank you for joining us. Welcome to the program.
David, thanks for asking me. I appreciate it very, very much.
Welcome.
Believe me.
Let's get a little bit of an idea about you, your background, and what drew you into this race for governor here in 2006.
Okay, I've been married since 1982. We have 2 children, one in college and one in high school. I've been on midnight since 1989, down at the DMC Hopper Hospital in Detroit. I've been a Libertarian ever since 1988 when I voted for Ron Paul, and I helped in the John Kuhn campaign in '92 when he ran for U.S. Senate. And their philosophy intrigued me when I first heard about them when I was in college in 1981 on a local talk show. Libertarians has been a party that I've enjoyed in being with and volunteering for all these years. And I've ran a couple campaigns, one for state rep and one for county commissioner, Wayne County Commissioner. And so this time I was asked to run for governor, and I said sure, and here I am.
Well, it's all about, as everybody that has sat where you're sitting now, the questions centering in on the economy in the state and the job situation and so forth. And so approaching this as a challenger in this race, what are the things specifically that you see need to be done differently in Lansing? What are the ideas you bring as a candidate for governor dealing with economy and jobs specifically?
To have a solution would be to, first of all, elect Libertarians throughout the state and make us a majority in Lansing, and then that will lead to tax cuts, business regulations reductions, and we will also reduce the cost of fees, permits, and license. The biggest problems are the 2 major parties that caused this. With their love for high taxes, they even shifted taxes. They increased the size of the cost of doing business with the increase in the fees and the permits and the license. And we would repeal all those and reduce them gradually so that the business persons could hire more, also expand their business. And one of the things that we think is an insult is for a business person to have to get permission from a politician to expand, to hire more employees, or even to lay off. So we believe in the free market 100%, not to have politicians micromanage the economy. And our philosophy is that what you own belongs to you and no one else. And so we would do those things.
Looking at the services that state government does provide, and this may be part of the question as well, when we've looked at the issue of how much taxes have been reduced, proposals for further tax reduction versus the cost of paying for those state services, it seems to evolve down to a question of what can the state afford, or do we hit a point where people have looked at where the cost of revenue versus the cost of what is coming into the state. So when you talk about the tax reductions to make business more compatible in Michigan, how do you address then the cost for state services?
Well, first of all, the state should not be obligated to provide us services. If we're not paying high taxes, we can take care of ourselves. Or donate to charities, to churches, to family, to friends, to neighbors. If we want to free ourselves from a politician dictating how we should live and where we should spend the money, then tax reductions is the way. The state should provide 4 functions: courts, state police, the state National Guard, and prisons. Those are the only 4 functions of state government. Everything else is supposed to be done through charity, churches, family, friends, and family. And if we got the money out of the hands of the politicians, we would be a much freer society in the state, a much more prosperous state here in this country.
How much of a timetable would you see for getting us from where we are now, the system as it has been operating, to the goal of having it run the way you envision? Is there a way to see how long a process that would take?
Yes, I believe in my first term, you would see a big change. to where the politicians would lose their power. There would be some that would try to fight to retain their power over us, their control over us. But if our party is the majority in Lansing, you would see a difference within the first term, and that would be a good thing for us as a state.
And the four items you said again: courts,
state National Guard, prisons, and state police. Those are the only four functions, and that is to protect our rights, our property, the state police, the courts, and the prisons, to imprison those that violate our rights, and then the state National Guards, who helps protect this nation from enemies from within and abroad.
And reducing then taxes to the point where those functions, those four functions, are paid for, and everything else, then obviously you would see the taxes being then phased out and those returning to the private sector.
Correct.
Then.
Those are the only four functions that the state government is supposed to be involved in.
Is this consistent then with those that are maybe not as familiar with the Libertarian platform to what is advocated on a national level? Then you're speaking from the same standpoint of anyone that would be running for national office at the same from the same party.
Well, right. If it's a national office, then they would say the military and the courts. So they would probably be even more narrow. But the government, the size of government for the federal government would also be reduced also. But for the state, again, it would be reduced down to those four items that I mentioned.
Now, when you've been talking to business people as you've traveled the state in the midst of the campaign, because you mentioned things like the cost, in generic terms, the cost of doing business.
Yes.
But that has been translated into the permits and other sorts of taxes,
fees,
SBT and things like this. What has been the reaction of business people to an evolution from, again, the way we are accustomed to doing business now and operating within the state to what you are proposing? What has been the reaction of business people? The
ones that I've come in contact with agree with that philosophy, because daily they have to fill out the paperwork to increase their business or to just everyday functions, and they find that it's cumbersome. I mean, it's a barrier, it's a roadblock, and to have politicians just arbitrarily just create a law to force them to expand, or that keeps them from expanding, it just drives them up the wall.
How does this play out in terms of the framework of the transitioning economy? We have seen, because of the global impact, the trade policies and so forth, the shift away from the traditional manufacturing base that we've had in Michigan. Those that are currently in that type of work now, transitioning perhaps to or changing as they go, welcoming in new businesses in some of these other arenas. How do you see those policies impacting that transition? The
reason we lost so many jobs is because of the high cost of doing business, the fees, the license, the permits. I work for a hospital. Now, they have to get permission from a politician to expand, to open up another wing, or to go into another county or city to open up another hospital. To ask a politician for permission is insane. Also, too, there's a tax on each bed that they would have to put into their hospital. That's outrageous. And then, of course, there's the increase in license. All of this keeps a business from expanding. To ask a politician if they can expand, to hire more employees, if they can open up a building, I mean, it's insane. I mean, why do they have that much power? We believe in getting rid of that power, and we will let the free market dictate who will survive and who will sink.
Among the most significant areas that you say returning to the private sector, in the few moments we have left, but education is always identified as a key concern of voters. The transition to an education system free of the tax revenue and the way it is presently being run. Do you see an overall change to the concept of public education, a shift to then more charter schools? How do you see education from here and what it will look like in the future under the plan that you propose?
Well, the power would be back into the hands of the parent or parents, where also, too, the individual would donate to a private scholarship, or they may even start a private scholarship to donate to a school for however many students they recover. What we also advocate is a dollar-for-dollar tax cut for that individual or that company that wants to start up a private school, we are advocating a separation of politician and education. Get the politicians out of it, away from it, and then you will see parents educating their kids much better because they would have more money in their pocket to send their kids to whatever college or university or even private school they choose, not some politician dictating the curriculum for them when it comes to K through 12 education. It is insane to have that much power in the hands of a politician.
How, as a candidate for governor, do you respond then to federal education policy? No Child Left Behind coming from Washington as a way where there is that overall approach to education and curriculum that has been coming in terms of federal policy. Would you want to see an end to that so that states run it and obviously then returning it fully to the individual?
Yes, sir. There's nothing in the United States Constitution that allows the federal government to be involved in education. The Constitution is supposed to limit the powers of Washington, D.C. politicians. The Bill of Rights also protects us from the politician. What we have to do is get the power away from them, and No Child Left Behind is a big waste of time and money. And for the two major parties, Ted Kennedy and George Bush, to write that boondoggle was a waste of time and a waste of effort and infringe upon the rights of the state, the power of the state to dictate how it should be run when it comes to education. And that is, for us, our philosophy is the free market and the parent should prevail, not a politician.
Now, when we're talking about especially young people at that K-12 level, you identified another area as within a first term, to use your phrase, to get us from here to there. When it comes to education, the same, because you're going to be having a lot of young people at various stages along their K-12 career, as we know it, in transitioning away from the public education system as we know. How do you address that transition to schools, again, schools now to schools as you see them?
Sure. A individual or a company would say, you know what, we're going to open up this private school, or they may even purchase that school that's there, retain the teachers that's there, the principal that's there, the support staff that's there, and then they would run it. And there's no need for a politician to say, you know what, those teachers have to be certified. No. All they have to do is be a graduate of a university or college, or even if a parent said, you know what, I believe that teacher is good for my child, no matter what somebody else says, that politician says, I want that child educated by that mechanic to show him how to fix cars. And that mechanic may just be a high school graduate. So to get the power and control out of the politicians' hands and into the hands of the free market and the parents is a good thing, in our opinion, in a free society.
Well, for the many issues that are on the voters' minds, translating that to the candidates seeking office, we know that in the midst of a busy campaign season, the chance for voters to hear from all the candidates and to have exposure to those views. Thank you for taking the time to come and address the issues with us and sharing those with the voters. We appreciate you being here.
I want to thank you for even asking me. I really do. I appreciate it. I've had a good time.
And thank you as well for your time and attention. Our guest has been Greg Creswell. He is the Libertarian candidate for governor of the state of Michigan. Remember that Election Day is on Tuesday, November 7th. We urge you to get out and use your right to vote on Election Day. Please do join us again for Meet the Candidates.